What secrets were held in the mystery schools that made them so important, so sought after? One of the secrets of the ancient mystery schools was an alternate history of human past that is cyclical. Civilization, consciousness, understanding, and ability, rising to incredible heights in the distant past and then falling back into barbarism, again and again, like the waves of high and low tides. This story has resonance in all cultures in the stories of the flood or the periodic catastrophes from many ancient myths. In this alternative model of our past, a vast accumulation of knowledge and ability was inherited from previous epochs. A legacy of high wisdom from an incredibly distant past is the source of the mysteriously powerful and unexplained accomplishments of the ancients. Accomplishments which even by today's standards seem in scope and operation to be nothing short of feats of magic. Ancient Egypt wielded a mastery over the material world that bordered on the supernatural. It seemed at times almost alien, its art and architecture showing not only an understanding, but an eerie control of the invisible forces and building blocks of our material world. Rightly considered powerful and dangerous tool, it was guarded with the utmost secrecy. Some priests accepted death before divulging the secrets to conquering Roman usurper pharaohs. Where did they learn the science behind these incredible acts? And stranger still, how could these abilities just appear, seemingly complete, at the very beginnings of Egyptian history? Where did the knowledge come from? The Egyptians, both ancient and modern, remain curiously silent on this topic. Egypt seems to have started out at its height and gradually declined, like a copy of a copy of a copy. Over the centuries, the mysteries held a little less with each successive retelling. In an attempt to guard the magic from abuse at the hands of the profane public, the mystery schools went into hiding. The ancient secrets were shrouded in allegory and symbol and placed under the guardianship of various streams of initiatic and secret societies. In time, it appeared that many, if not all, connections to the original source were severed or so diluted that the true mysteries were lost to history. Over the millennia, the temples fell into ruin, and eventually so did the teachings they enshrined. When the great library of Alexandria was burned, all hope of reconnection to the wisdom of the past seemed lost. When we return, we look at an unusual man who rekindled the lost magic and returned to the modern world the teachings and wisdom of the ancient mystery schools. The secrets and magic of the mystery schools seemed lost to history when in 1937 a most unusual man again reopened a window into this culture and the magical technology that was its legacy. R.A. Schwaller de Lubitz was a latter-day alchemist, as well as an accomplished mathematician, chemist, author, and philosopher. Schwaller opened a window into the lost magic and mentality of the ancients. Through an ingenious reinterpretation of the evidence, Schwaller recreated a model of ancient Egypt that resurrects the ancient secrets for modern eyes. Understanding the mentality of the ancient world through the decoding lens of symbolism, Schwaller showed the Egyptians were not the superstitious savages modern Western academic thought holds them to have been. Instead, he showed example after example of high wisdom and accomplishment, not only equaling that of modern science, but in some instances far surpassing modern abilities. The key that unlocked the ancient veil lie in a slight change in perspective of mindset. As one learns to enter the mindset of pharaonic Egypt, the cryptic message from the past comes to life and allows access to previously invisible and unimagined realms of consciousness, understanding, and ability. The crux of the old teachings was contained and transmitted through what Schwaller called sacred science, which included symbolism, harmonic proportion, and sacred geometry. Sacred science was the original unified source of the myriad streams of modern mysticism, occultism, esotericism, and magical disciplines that exist today. It is also the unified source for such diverse contemporary sciences as chemistry, physical science, philosophy, medicine, astronomy, geometry, architecture, music, and mathematics. Through the linchpin of sacred sciences, Schwaller not only showed an original unity of the material sciences, but even shed new light on such shadowy subjects as the tarot, astrology, and many, many other forms of magic. Schwaller spent over a decade on-site at Luxor Temple, which would come to be known as the Temple of Man. It was here that he performed his master work.
A latter-day Renaissance man. He was born in the 1890s, died in the early 1960s, and was, among other things, a practicing latter-day alchemist, and very much deeply involved in alchemy. He was also thoroughly conversant with the esoteric and mystical traditions of the East, and at the same time equally conversant and familiar with the modern developments in science, mathematics, physics, and so on. It was Schwaller who, in 2 decades of work in Egypt, mainly at the Temple of Luxor, who reformulated in transmittable and accessible fashion the wisdom of the ancients. It is through Schwaller that we're able, for the first time, to actually gain access to the doctrine, the sacred science or sacred sciences responsible for those astonishing resonating temples, pyramids, and tombs. Prior to Schwaller, there was a long-standing tradition dating back to the Greeks themselves, in which ancient Egypt was the fount of all wisdom, which subsequently degenerated and dispersed over time. But prior to Schwaller, it was impossible to actually argue from documented evidence that this was indeed the case. Schwaller provides the documentation in impeccable form. It's there to be disproved if anyone can do so. In the 50 years since Schwaller produced the body of his work, a number of scholars have abused him roundly, but none have actually offered anything resembling satisfactory disproof or discredit to his extraordinary works.
In its own way, the Temple of Man was a kind of Rosetta Stone. It contained the means within itself to decode and reconstruct the layers and subtleties of the symbolic and sacred technology of the ancient mysteries. Schwaller showed that the temple was not just the location of the teaching, but was itself the teaching. Its hieroglyphics and harmonic proportions contained a catalogue of the occult laws, sacred geometry, and archetypal forces that combined to make the universe and its culmination, living man. Through a chain of analogies, occult correspondences, sacred geometry and symbolism, the temple itself becomes the actual technology through which one can undergo the initiation process and begin to experience the mentality and magic of the ancients. When correctly interpreted, the temple echoes and amplifies the great arcanum as above, so below. Man and the cosmos can be seen to be magically analogous, governed by the same rules of sacred geometry, each an octave of the other. After Schwaller's death, the torch was picked up by a new generation of symbolists, one of the most venerated of whom is John Anthony West. West brought the obscure French work to the public eye in the symbolist classic Serpent in the Sky. West not only rekindled Schwaller's revelations, but built upon them in a manner that acted like a fulcrum, upsetting the Stoic worlds of archaeology, theology, and science. When Serpent was published, shockwaves erupted as an evidence bomb that lay in full view of all at the very site of the Great Sphinx exploded. An observation by Schwaller, mentioned in passing, caught West's attention. Schwaller noticed and recorded the fact that vertical fissures